Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Deuteronomy 23. Moses is still repeating laws from the Torah, and a lot of these are all about social interactions. How should the Israelites treat each other? How should they treat people who are less fortunate than themselves? And in light of all of God's instructions, what does that mean for us today? If you want to join our community of Christ followers studying the Bible together, then like this video and subscribe, and leave a comment or a question below. No one who is emasculated or has his male organ cut off shall enter the assembly of the Lord. No one of illegitimate birth shall enter the assembly of the Lord. None of his descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall enter the assembly of the Lord. So here we have commands about who can and who can't enter the assembly. It's actually really similar to the priestly restrictions from Leviticus 21 and 22. And like we said back in those videos for Leviticus, this isn't about sin, right? It's not a sin to be a eunuch or a bastard. For the former, Jesus himself said as much in Matthew 19. In the latter, no one can control if your parents were married or not when you were conceived. You weren't even conceived yet. And so people with these conditions are not sinful, but they are unclean. Because remember, God is so holy. God is so holy that nothing that is tainted, nothing that reminds him of the brokenness of his good creation can come near to him without bad things happening. And that's why unclean people of all sorts were not allowed to enter the assembly. That is, they weren't able to get near to the tabernacle, the tent of God's presence, where God's presence was living. They weren't able to come close to that when they were making their sacrifices. At the end of it all of this cleanliness and uncleanliness is a reminder that God is living among the people. If God is here, they need to show respect to him and they need to show reverence for him. And they do that by living upright, holy lives that are clean and honorable. No Ammonite or Moabite shall enter the assembly of the Lord. None of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall ever enter the assembly of the Lord, because they did not meet you with food and water on the way when you came out of Egypt. And because they hired against you Balaam the son of Beor from Pethor of Mesopotamia to curse you. Nevertheless, the Lord your God was not willing to listen to Balaam, but the Lord your God turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. You shall never seek their peace or their prosperity all your days. Now similarly, Ammonites and Moabites were also barred from entering the assembly. And Moses cites their antagonistic behavior against the wandering Israelites as the reason why they're banned. Even though God refused to curse Israel at Balaam's request, the Israelites were still very tempted to, and some still did, indulge in the pagan gods of Moab anyway. And so to maintain that going forward, no idolatry, no sexual immorality takes place, Moses calls for Israel to separate themselves from the Moabites and the Ammonites, especially when it comes to worshiping God at his place in his tabernacle. And this even applies to their descendants as far as 10 generations. Now we also have to remember that there were some pretty major exceptions to this. Ruth was actually a Moabite, one who feared God and obeyed him. And in turn, she became the great-great-grandmother of King Solomon, who not only went near the temple, he built it and consecrated it. And so this further shows that these laws were not meant to institute racial segregation, but to ensure that the worship of the one true God did not become compromised by foreign pagan rituals. You shall not detest an Edomite, for he is your brother. You shall not detest an Egyptian, because you were an alien in his land. The sons of the 3rd generation who are born to them may enter the assembly of the Lord. When you go out as an army against your enemies, you shall keep yourself from every evil thing. Meanwhile, these standards are more generous to Edomites and Egyptians. They're banned from the assembly for only 3 generations as opposed to 10. Remember that the Edomites were descendants of Esau, Jacob's brother, and they did not openly attack the Israelites when they were en route to Canaan. And the Egyptians, while they were very harsh in Moses' time, had actually had good relations with the Israelites prior to that. And then Moses continues with a very important instruction on how the Israelites are to conduct themselves during times of war and battle. Even in those desperate times, the people are supposed to keep themselves from every evil thing. The ends of military victory will never justify the means of corrupt violence and evil in whatever form that takes. Even today, especially in our modern political landscape, we are constantly tempted to break the rules, to do objectively evil things in the name of winning a war, whether that's a military war or a culture war. But that is not the model of victory that the Bible presents us with. Follow God first, do good first, and God will give you the victory. We can't get those ideas twisted. That was true for the Israelites then, and it's true for us today. If there is among you any man who is unclean because of a nocturnal emission, then he must go outside the camp. He may not re-enter the camp. But it shall be when evening approaches, he shall bathe himself with water, and at sundown he may re-enter the camp. You shall also have a place outside the camp, and go out there. And you shall have a spade among your tools, and it shall be when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it, and shall turn to cover up your excrement. Since the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and to defeat your enemies before you, therefore your camp must be holy, and he must not see anything indecent among you, or he will turn away from you. Moses re-emphasizes here that the Israelites need to stay clean and stay pure. That includes washing themselves after nocturnal emissions and burying their excrement. Now again, these are normal bodily functions, right? There's nothing sinful about them. But the people still need to have a respect and a reverence for God and others. They need to treat their tents as holy. They need to treat their neighbors' tents as holy. Moses even says that God is with them. He's walking around and surrounding them. So it would be pretty disrespectful to God if you were to step in your own feces. And this is why there are so many laws about purity and cleanliness in the Bible. Not just when it comes to ethics and morality, but also when it comes to your physical body, what you eat and don't eat. It's all about being holy as God is holy. Why? Because God is living with them and walking among them. And if they want him to keep doing that, then they need to keep themselves clean. They need to keep themselves away from all of those things that represent taintedness and brokenness in God's creation that was originally good and perfect. You shall not hand over to his master a slave who has escaped from his master to you. He shall live with you in your midst, in the place which he shall choose in one of your towns where it pleases him. You shall not mistreat him. Now, most times whenever the Bible mentions slavery, we Christians tend to brace ourselves and try to put on our best apologetics face, but I think this law really speaks for itself. Here we see a completely countercultural way of thinking. Even though the Israelites did own slaves, and thank God that that has been abolished in our country today, the fact remains that the Israelites were demanded by God to treat these slaves with decency and human dignity. So much so that runaway slaves were not supposed to be detained and handed over to their masters. They were to live among the people in the city that they chose and not have to fear mistreatment. I mean, this is something that is still a black stain on the history of the United States, the country where I live. But after all, it makes sense for the Israelites. I mean, they are a nation of runaway slaves. If they were to refuse that security to other slaves or even their own slaves, they would be complete hypocrites. None of the daughters of Israel shall be a cult prostitute, nor shall any of the sons of Israel be a cult prostitute. You shall not bring the hire of a harlot or the wages of a dog into the house of the Lord your God for any votive offering, for both of these are an abomination to the Lord your God. Another staple of ancient pagan religions was cult prostitution, as alluded to in Numbers 25. And God's people were to absolutely abstain from this practice. God's tabernacle, and subsequently the temple, were places for the people to worship him and treat him with respect and reverence through their physical bodies. And God finds no joy, no pleasure in that kind of often exploitative hedonism. Further, God doesn't even want offerings from the money acquired from prostitution. It's abhorrent to him. I mean, after all, this is the God who made man and woman to unite together to become one flesh. Exchanging that sacred joining for monetary gain is and should be looked down upon. You shall not charge interest to your countrymen, interest on money, food, or anything that may be loaned at interest. You may charge interest to a foreigner, But to your countrymen you shall not charge interest, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all that you undertake in the land which you are about to enter to possess. And here we have another law that is as shocking to us under 21st century capitalism as it would have been to Moses' original audience. The Israelites are not supposed to collect interest on anything that was loaned. Anything that they loaned out to their fellow Israelites, they were not to collect interest on. And I mean, this is so fundamentally against our current economic system. But it speaks to the grace and the brotherhood that the people ought to feel towards each other. After all, God has not charged us interest on our sin debt. He didn't say, if you believe in Jesus and you do all these other things to make up for all the sin that you committed, then you can be forgiven. In fact, we couldn't even pay our debt ourselves. That's why He, through Christ, has absolved us from it. And so to turn around and demand interest on debts owed to us, again, that would be extremely hypocritical. When you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it, for it would be sin in you, and the Lord your God would surely require it of you. However, if you refrain from vowing, it would not be sin in you. You shall be careful to perform what goes out from your lips, just as you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised. Once again, this is more repeated instruction. This time we find it in Numbers 30. Honoring vows and oaths were a major point of emphasis for nearly all ancient Near Eastern cultures, not just the Israelites. Whether the people pledged to give a certain amount of money or make a specific type of votive offering, God says if they promise to do it, then they better do it, and do it as soon as they can. Now Moses makes it clear that you aren't required to vow anything to the Lord. So any vows that you do make, you ought to be honorable and keep them. Going forward with that logic, Jesus himself advised his followers to not make any vows or oaths at all, either way. He challenges us to live with inherent integrity. That virtue should be obvious from the way we live our lives. We let our yes be yes and our no be no, and we don't have to pledge or vow anything to get someone to believe us. When you enter your neighbor's vineyard, then you may eat grapes until you are fully satisfied, but you shall not put any in your basket. When you enter your neighbor's standing grain, then you may pluck the heads with your hand, but you shall not wield a sickle in your neighbor's standing grain. The final commands in this chapter are very similar to ones found in Leviticus 19 and Deuteronomy 24, all about letting the poor glean your fields and vineyards. Here, God says that anyone passing by a grain field or a vineyard can stop and have their fill. But they're not supposed to bring a bag, right? They're not supposed to fill up a basket to take for the road. It's a little odd and pretty specific, but it shows the mentality that the Israelites need to have if they're going to be the people of God. If you're the owner of that field or vineyard, you've got to be generous with your possessions. After all, it wasn't you that created all of this wealth. It was God who gave it to you. But if you're the one eating in that vineyard or in that field, then you're not supposed to take advantage of the generosity that's being shown to you. Now, finding this balance in everyday life can be tricky, and it often was in the early church. But this is the niche that our church operations, and indeed our entire lives, should depend on. Balancing extreme generosity and extreme integrity. And so this chapter is a long list of laws about all kinds of social situations. A lot that are pretty foreign to us. It includes washing people who are unclean, protecting runaway slaves, not charging interest, and not taking advantage of the generosity of your countrymen. But taken all together, they really show us the importance of holiness, sexual and moral purity. We should be holy because God is holy, and we are called to be images of God. We, as Christians today, are called to be His people. That's as true for the church today as it was for the Israelites back then. So, will we live like it? Thanks for watching this episode of 1189. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a good day, and I hope God blesses you. Stay safe. We'll see you in the next one.